Long before written history, before the first pyramids rose from the desert or the earliest kings carved their names into stone, there existed a civilization that humanity would one day remember only in fragments, whispers, and forbidden myths. At the edge of the world, where the sky meets an endless sheet of ice, stood a city known as Etherian. It was not built of stone like later human cities, nor carved from earth. Instead, it seemed grown rather than constructed, as if the very ground had shaped itself into towering spires, spiraling arches, and crystalline domes that shimmered with an inner light. Etherian rested atop a frozen ocean, so ancient that even the stars above had changed since its formation. The air around it glowed faintly, illuminated by floating orbs that hovered silently through the streets. These orbs were neither fire nor electricity as humans would later understand them. They were harnessed energy, drawn from the planet's magnetic field itself. The people of Etherian called themselves the Luminii, the children of light. They were tall, graceful beings with pale, almost translucent skin and eyes that glowed faintly like distant stars. Their hair shimmered silver or deep midnight blue, and their voices carried a calm, resonant harmony that could soothe storms or shake mountains. Unlike later human civilizations that relied on brute force, weapons, and conquest, the Luminii mastered energy, nature, and the very fabric of reality. Their scholars could read the movement of the stars with such precision that they predicted cosmic events centuries in advance. Their engineers shaped matter at a molecular level, constructing structures that could repair themselves when damaged. Their healers could regenerate tissue, reverse aging, and cure diseases that would later plague mankind for millennia. At the heart of Etherian stood the celestial nexus, a colossal structure resembling a suspended sphere of light, rotating slowly within a transparent dome. This was not merely a monument, it was a source of limitless power, drawing energy from deep within the earth and from the cosmic currents that flowed through space. The Luminii used this power not for domination, but for balance. They maintained the climate, stabilized tectonic plates, and guided the migration of great creatures across the planet. They had no armies, for they had no enemies, or so they believed. But beyond the frozen horizon, beyond the shimmering lights of Etherian, something was stirring. In the deep darkness beneath the ice, where even the Luminii's instruments could barely reach, ancient shadows began to move. These were not natural forces. They were remnants of something far older than Etherian itself, entities that predated even the Luminii's rise. They were known in Luminii lore as the Veiled Ones. Few believed they truly existed. They were spoken of only in hushed tones by the eldest scholars, described as beings of pure consciousness, neither alive nor dead, existing between dimensions. Legends said that the Veiled Ones once ruled the planet in a time so distant that no record remained. One night, when the auroras painted the sky in rippling waves of violet and emerald, the celestial nexus flickered. For the first time in thousands of years, the energy flow faltered. High Priestess Seraphine, the guardian of the nexus, felt it instantly. Her heart, a perfectly synchronized bioenergetic organ, skipped in an unnatural rhythm. She ascended the central spire, her footsteps leaving faint trails of light across the crystalline floor. Inside the nexus chamber, the sphere pulsed erratically. Images flashed across its surface, not random distortions, but visions. Crumbling cities, oceans boiling, skies torn apart by lightning that struck without clouds. Seraphine extended her hand, and the sphere reacted, projecting a holographic map of the world. Across its surface, dark points appeared, scattered across continents that would one day be called Antarctica, Atlantis, Lemuria, and Hyperborea. Each point marked a location where ancient power was awakening. The Luminii Council convened in the Hall of Mirrors, a vast chamber lined with reflective crystalline walls that displayed shifting patterns of knowledge. 12 elders gathered in a circle, their forms shimmering with controlled energy. "Something is awakening," Seraphine declared, her voice calm yet filled with urgency. "The Veiled Ones stir from their slumber. The balance of the world is threatened." Some elders dismissed the warning. They argued that Etherian had stood unchallenged for tens of thousands of years. Why would danger emerge now? But others felt the tremors beneath their feet. Meanwhile, deep beneath the ice, a colossal structure began to rise. It was not built by the Luminii. It was older. Miles below the frozen crust, ancient pillars of black stone, smooth, cold, and absorbing all light, began to shift. Vast doors etched with symbols unknown even to the Luminii slowly opened, releasing a pulse that rippled through the planet like a heartbeat. Far above, in Etherian, the celestial nexus reacted violently, its light flaring so bright that it turned night into day. For the first time, fear spread among the Laminii. They had mastered nature, but they had never faced something that existed beyond nature. At the same time, beyond Etherian, small human tribes, primitive, struggling, and unaware, huddled around fires, watching the strange lights in the northern sky. They would later interpret them as gods, spirits, or omens. Unseen by them, their fate was now intertwined with that of the Laminii. As the first tremor of an approaching catastrophe rolled across the frozen world, Seraphine stood atop the highest spire of Etherian, gazing into the darkness beyond the auroras. She knew one truth with absolute certainty. The Age of Harmony was ending, and the greatest civilization the world had ever known was about to face its first, and possibly final, test. The sky above Etherian burned. What had once been a shimmering tapestry of dancing auroras now resembled a torn veil of chaos. Bands of green and violet twisted violently, interwoven with streaks of deep crimson and midnight black. Thunder rolled across the frozen horizon, not from clouds, but from the sheer collision of cosmic and void energies tearing through reality. The Veiled Ones advanced. No longer scattered across the planet, they had converged into a single, immense presence, a living eclipse that stretched from the surface of the ice into the depths of the heavens. Its body was not solid. It was a constantly shifting storm of darkness threaded with glowing, ancient runes that pulsed like a malignant heartbeat. Everywhere it moved, the laws of nature bent. Gravity warped. Time stuttered. Space folded like fragile glass. In Etherian, the Laminii stood at the brink of annihilation. The solar arcs that still functioned hovered above the city, pouring torrents of stellar energy downward in a desperate attempt to hold back the advancing darkness. Their beams carved glowing scars across the sky, but the Veiled One simply absorbed the light, growing even more powerful. On the frozen plains beyond the city, thousands of guardians of light marched forward, their crystalline forms blazing with radiant energy. They formed a colossal defensive line, raising luminous shields that shimmered like liquid starlight. The Veiled One swept its arm across the horizon. A wave of pure void energy surged outward. Where it touched, guardians disintegrated, not destroyed but erased as if they had never existed at all. Their light was swallowed whole, leaving behind only empty space. Inside the celestial nexus, Seraphine hovered in midair, suspended within a vortex of radiant energy. Her body glowed so intensely that she no longer appeared fully physical, more like a being composed of living light. She was no longer merely a priestess. She had become the conduit between the planet and the cosmos. Through the nexus, she saw everything at once. The ancient vaults beneath the ice fully opening. The black monoliths rising across the world like silent sentinels. The Veiled Ones reshaping the planet's energy grid to their will. And far away, in warmer lands, early human tribes trembling beneath the same sky, unaware that their future hung in the balance. The Laminii Council gathered one last time in the Hall of Mirrors. The chamber was damaged, crystalline walls fractured, floating knowledge glyphs flickering, mirrors cracked but still reflecting the devastation outside. Elder Kalian spoke first, his voice calm but heavy with inevitability. "We cannot win this battle." Silence followed. No one argued. Seraphine appeared before them as a projection of pure light, her presence filling the chamber. "There is only one path left," she said. "The chronolock must be activated." Several elders recoiled. The chronolock was not merely a weapon, it was a cosmic seal. It would not just banish the Veiled Ones. It would rip them out of time itself, imprisoning them in a dimension beyond existence. But the cost was unimaginable. To activate it, the celestial nexus would have to be overloaded beyond its limits. And Etherian itself would not survive. Elder Lasara, the oldest among them, spoke with trembling clarity. "If we do this, our civilization will end." Seraphine nodded. "Yes, but life will continue." Through the nexus, she showed them a vision. A future Earth where continents shifted and changed. New civilizations rose from ashes. Humans built pyramids, temples, and cities, unknowingly atop Laminii ruins. Myths of gods, angels, and fallen cities echoed fragments of their story. And one day, distant descendants would search for Atlantis, Hyperborea, and Lemuria, never knowing they were once real. Tears of luminous energy rolled down Lasara's face. "Then we do not die, we become memory." The council gave its final consent. Outside, the Veiled One reached Etherian's outer walls. It did not attack like a soldier. It unmade. The city's self-repairing structures began to fail. Tower after tower dissolved into swirling particles of light. Streets fractured. Domes collapsed, not violently, but silently, as if reality itself were deciding to forget them. In response, Seraphine unleashed the full power of the celestial nexus. A colossal column of radiant energy erupted from the heart of Etherian, piercing the heavens. The entire city shimmered like a star reborn, its light visible across the entire planet. The Veiled One halted. For the first time, hesitation flickered within its impossible form. Seraphine extended her will through the nexus, weaving an intricate lattice of cosmic energy, the framework of the chronolock. Symbols older than the Laminii, older than the Veiled Ones, and older than Earth itself manifested in the sky. Time itself began to distort. Seconds stretched into eternities. The frozen ocean rippled like liquid glass. The stars above seemed to shift positions, as if recoiling from what was about to happen. The Veiled One roared, not with sound, but with a force that shattered mountains miles away. It surged forward in a final attempt to destroy Etherian before the seal could be completed. At that moment, Seraphine made her ultimate sacrifice. She did not merely channel the nexus. She merged with it. Her luminous form dissolved into pure energy, becoming one with the celestial sphere. The nexus blazed brighter than 1,000 suns, its light washing across the entire world. The chronolock snapped into place. Reality split open. A vast, glowing rift tore across the sky, its edges shimmering with impossible colors. From it emerged a boundless lattice of light, the cosmic prison designed to trap the Veiled Ones beyond time. The Veiled One fought with everything it had. Darkness clashed with light. Void battled creation. For a brief moment, the entire planet trembled between existence and oblivion. Then, slowly, inexorably, the Veiled One was pulled backward. Its colossal form stretched, twisted, and fractured as the chronolock dragged it into the rift. Its roar echoed across the world, resonating through oceans, mountains, and the hearts of every living being. One by one, the other Veiled Ones were torn from reality, their dark presences vanishing into the glowing prison beyond time. The black monoliths across the planet crumbled into dust. The ancient vaults beneath the ice sealed themselves once more. And the sky fell silent. But the price was devastating. The celestial nexus overloaded. A blinding shockwave radiated outward, obliterating the core of Etherian. The magnificent city, the greatest civilization the world had ever known, began to collapse. Crystal spires shattered into fragments of light. Floating orbs flickered out of existence. The frozen ocean cracked, opening colossal chasms that swallowed entire districts of the city. The Laminii, seeing their fate sealed, did not flee. Instead, they gathered together, forming circles of radiant unity. Many dissolved into pure energy, choosing to merge with the planet itself rather than perish. Others sealed themselves within hidden chambers deep beneath the ice, entering stasis, hoping that one day, in some distant future, they might awaken. Above them, the last remnants of Etherian sank beneath the frozen waves. The great city disappeared beneath the ocean, lost to time, buried beneath miles of ice and silence. Far away, early humans witnessed the catastrophe from their primitive camps. They saw the sky split, the world shake, and a city of light vanish beneath the horizon. In their awe and terror, they told stories of gods battling demons, of a radiant kingdom that fell beneath the sea. Those stories would echo through millennia, becoming legends of Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, the city of the gods. But the truth was far older, far more tragic, and far more profound. As the chronolock sealed completely, Seraphine's final voice echoed across the world, not as a sound, but as a feeling etched into the fabric of existence. We do not vanish, we endure in the memory of the stars. And then silence. The ice slowly healed. The auroras returned, calmer than before. The planet lived on. But Etherian was gone. The Laminii were lost. And humanity, ignorant of the sacrifice that had saved them, began its slow rise from fire-lit caves to civilizations of its own. Beneath the ice, however, fragments remained. Buried crystals still pulsing faintly with Laminii energy. Dormant chambers waiting for an awakening that might never come. And deep within the planet, the chronolock holding firm, keeping the Veiled Ones imprisoned beyond time. The world had been saved, but at a cost so great that no living being would fully comprehend it for tens of thousands of years. Centuries passed. Then millennia. The ice that swallowed Ethereum slowly shifted with the turning of the ages. Glaciers drifted. Continents moved. The world that once housed the Laminii became unrecognizable. Where the radiant city had stood, there was now only a frozen, silent ocean, a white, endless expanse that reflected the pale sun like a broken mirror. Yet Ethereum was not entirely gone. Deep beneath miles of ice, fragments of the city remained preserved in an impossible state, neither fully destroyed nor truly alive. Tower bases lay buried in crystalline chambers. Energy conduits still hummed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the planet's magnetic field. And at the deepest level, shattered pieces of the celestial nexus lingered, glowing dimly like dying embers. The chronolock held firm. Invisible to any being, it existed beyond conventional space, a lattice of cosmic light that bound the veiled ones in a realm outside of time. Occasionally, faint tremors rippled through reality, tiny signs of the imprisoned entities testing their bonds, but the seal remained unbroken. On the surface, life moved on. In warmer regions of the world, humanity began to rise. Primitive tribes evolved into settlements. Settlements grew into villages. Villages transformed into early civilizations along great rivers: the Nile, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Indus, and the Yellow River. Yet even as humans progressed, they carried fragments of a forgotten memory deep within their collective consciousness. They dreamed of cities made of light. They told stories of beings who descended from the stars. They worshipped gods who controlled the heavens, the oceans, and the earth, gods who mirrored, unknowingly, the lost Laminii. In Egypt, priests spoke of a first time, when divine beings ruled before humanity. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians carved tablets describing gods who came from the sky and possessed unimaginable knowledge. In ancient India, sages described beings called the Devas, radiant entities who shaped reality itself. Across the world, myths of a golden age emerged, a time when humanity lived in harmony with celestial beings, before disaster struck. None of these cultures knew the truth, but echoes of the Laminii lingered. The first discovery. Thousands of years after Ethereum's fall, a violent earthquake shook a frozen region near the southern edge of the world, a land that future humans would call Antarctica. Massive glaciers cracked open, revealing a cavern that had been sealed since the time of the Laminii. Inside lay something astonishing. A colossal chamber of crystalline walls, filled with floating orbs of dormant energy. At its center stood a Laminii sentinel, one of the guardians of light, preserved in perfect condition, its crystalline armor still faintly glowing. Centuries later, when human explorers finally reached these icy lands, they would find nothing. But in this ancient moment, the chamber was not discovered by humans. Instead, something else arrived. From the depths of the ocean, an unknown intelligence stirred, an ancient, deep-sea species that had evolved in isolation for millions of years. Drawn by the faint energy signature, it approached the cavern through underground tunnels. When it entered, the dormant sentinel reacted. Its eyes ignited with brilliant light. For a brief moment, the Laminii legacy awakened. But lacking a Laminii operator, the sentinel could not function fully. After scanning the creature and its environment, it returned to dormancy, its mission incomplete, its purpose lost to time. The chamber sealed itself once more, sinking deeper beneath shifting ice. Fragments across the world. Elsewhere, smaller remnants of Laminii technology surfaced in scattered places across the planet. In what would one day be called the Atlantic Ocean, a massive crystalline structure lay submerged beneath the waves, the remnants of an outpost connected to Ethereum. This structure emitted faint pulses of energy that subtly influenced the ocean currents above it. Over time, islands formed around it. Eventually, early humans settled these islands, unknowingly building their civilization atop ancient Laminii foundations. This became the origin of what later legends would call Atlantis, a powerful, advanced society that mysteriously vanished beneath the sea. In the far north, beyond human habitation, another Laminii sanctuary remained hidden within an immense mountain of ice. Within it, several Laminii elders lay in stasis, their bodies preserved in chambers of radiant light. Occasionally, during powerful auroras, their chambers flickered to life, projecting visions into the sky that humans interpreted as spiritual omens or divine messages. This land became the basis of legends about Hyperborea, a mythical northern paradise inhabited by godlike beings. Meanwhile, in tropical regions, fragments of Laminii crystal embedded deep within the earth began to influence human development in subtle ways. Certain individuals, priests, shamans, or mystics, were born with heightened perception, inexplicable healing abilities, or prophetic visions. They became revered as spiritual leaders, but none knew the true source of their gifts. They were not chosen by gods. They were affected by the lingering energy of a lost civilization. The Hidden Watchers. Though the Laminii civilization was gone, not all of them vanished. In hidden chambers beneath the ice and deep underground caverns, a small number of Laminii remained in stasis, their bodies preserved, their consciousness linked to ancient systems still faintly operational. Among them was Elder Kalian. His stasis pod lay in a vast, dark chamber beneath what would one day be known as the South Pole. Above him stretched miles of ice, slowly shifting through the ages. Inside his chamber, holographic projections replayed fragments of the past. The rise of the Veiled Ones, the destruction of Etherian, Seraphine's sacrifice, the sealing of the chronolock. Occasionally, his consciousness stirred, connected to faint planetary sensors that still functioned. Through them, he watched humanity evolve. He observed the building of the pyramids, the fall of ancient empires, the rise of new religions, the invention of writing, science, and technology. At times, he felt hope. At others, despair. Humans were creative, resilient, and curious, but also violent, greedy, and destructive. Kalian wondered, would they repeat the Laminii's mistakes? Or would they forge a different path? A warning from the past. One day, far in the future, a catastrophic solar storm swept through the planet. The massive burst of cosmic radiation interacted with buried Laminii crystals across the world, briefly reactivating ancient systems that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years. In multiple locations, crystalline chambers flickered to life. Energy pylons emitted beams into the sky. Holographic projections of Laminii cities appeared above oceans and deserts. And for a fleeting moment, the chronolock pulsed with visible light in the heavens. Humans, still far from understanding such phenomena, interpreted this as religious miracles, alien contact, signs of apocalypse. In one remote region, deep beneath the ice, Kalian's chamber fully reactivated. His consciousness awakened completely. For the first time in ages, he perceived the world clearly. And what he sensed terrified him. Deep beyond the chronolock, in the realm outside time, the Veiled Ones were stirring more violently than. The warning was not heeded. Centuries after Kalian's message echoed through the planet, humanity reached a new height of technological power. Cities glittered with artificial light visible from space. Satellites circled the Earth like metal constellations. Humans split the atom, mapped the genome, and began to reach beyond their world. They no longer feared the heavens, they sought to conquer them. But in doing so, they unknowingly disturbed forces far older than their species. Deep beneath Antarctica, drilling stations bored into ancient ice in search of resources. In laboratories across the world, scientists experimented with quantum energy, dark matter, and dimensional physics, probing the very boundaries of reality. Every experiment sent subtle ripples through the fabric of existence. And every ripple brushed against the chronolock. At first, the seal held firm. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, it began to tremble. The first breach. On a cold, silent night, the sky above Antarctica shimmered violently. Auroras twisted into unnatural shapes, spirals, lattices, and geometric patterns that no natural phenomenon could explain. The stars flickered as if being viewed through cracked glass. Deep beneath the ice, the shattered remnants of the celestial nexus glowed brighter than they had in tens of thousands of years. In the realm beyond time, the Veiled Ones sensed the disturbance. Their prison, the luminous lattice forged by Seraphine's sacrifice, pulsed erratically. Hairline fractures appeared across its infinite structure, like cracks in a cosmic mirror. One of the Veiled Ones reached outward. Not physically, but with pure will. A thread of its consciousness slipped through the weakening seal. On Earth, instruments across the planet detected an impossible anomaly. A signal that did not travel through space, but through reality itself. Satellites failed. Power grids flickered. Deep-sea sensors recorded massive disturbances. And in remote research stations in Antarctica, something awakened. A Laminii chamber, buried beneath miles of ice, powered on fully for the first time since the fall of Etherian. Inside it, Elder Kalian emerged from stasis. His body, preserved in radiant energy, stepped onto a crystalline floor that glowed beneath his feet. Holographic displays ignited around him, mapping the planet in real time, not as humans saw it, but as the Laminii once had, a web of living energy. He saw the fractures in the chronoloch, and he understood. The Veiled Ones were returning. Humanity's discovery. At the same time, humanity made its own discovery. A multinational expedition drilling deep into Antarctic ice accidentally uncovered an ancient Laminii chamber. The same one Kalian had just awakened. Scientists entered, awestruck by its impossible architecture. Crystalline walls that glowed without visible light. Floating energy orbs that reacted to human presence. Holograms that activated automatically, projecting images of a lost civilization. Before they could comprehend what they had found, Kalian appeared. Not as a physical being at first, but as a luminous projection. His presence filled the chamber with calm, ancient authority. Humans recoiled in shock. Some fell to their knees. Others scrambled to record every second. Kalian spoke, not in any human language, but in a universal resonance that translated directly into their minds. You have reached the threshold we once crossed. Through his holographic interface, he showed them visions. The rise of Etherian. The awakening of the Veiled Ones. The fall of the Laminii. Seraphine's sacrifice. The sealing of the chronoloch. The scientists watched in stunned silence as history, and something far older, unfolded before them. Then Kalian revealed the truth. The seal is breaking. Your experiments have accelerated its collapse. Panic spread among the researchers. One of them, trembling, asked aloud, "Can it be stopped?" Kalian hesitated, a rare display of emotion for a being like him. "It can be delayed, but not without cost." The Veiled Ones break through. Before humanity could respond, the chronoloch fractured further. Across the planet, black rifts tore open in the sky. Not physical tears, but distortions where reality itself bent inward. From these rifts, shadows began to seep into the world. Not full Veiled Ones, not yet, but fragments of their presence. Dark tendrils of consciousness that twisted through the air like living smoke. Where they touched, reality warped. Oceans churned without wind. Mountains trembled. Animals fled in terror. Humans experienced mass hallucinations, visions of endless darkness, ancient beings, and worlds beyond comprehension. In major cities, people looked up and saw impossible shapes moving across the sky, silhouettes of beings that should not exist. Governments collapsed into chaos. Religions proclaimed the end of the world. But in Antarctica, Kalian prepared for a final stand. The last Laminii protocol. Kalian activated what remained of the ancient Laminii planetary network. Across the world, buried crystalline pylons, long dormant, ignited with radiant energy. Beams of light shot into the heavens, reconnecting in a vast global lattice. This was not the chronoloch. It was something older. The harmonic grid. A system the Laminii once used to maintain planetary balance before the rise of the Veiled Ones. For a brief moment, the distortions in the sky stabilized. But Kalian knew it was temporary. He turned to the human scientists. "You must choose." Holographic projections appeared before them, displaying two possible futures. Path 1, domination. Humanity could attempt to harness Laminii technology, weaponize it, and fight the Veiled Ones directly. They would gain unimaginable power, but risk becoming what the Laminii once were, arrogant, absolute, and doomed. Path 2, balance. Humanity could instead help reinforce the chronoloch, not through force, but through global unity, cooperation, and a harmonization of science and spirituality. But this would require sacrifice. Nations would have to abandon weapons of mass destruction. Energy RS. Systems would need to shift away from destructive exploitation of the planet. And humanity would have to accept that they were not masters of reality, merely its caretakers. The choice rested in human hands. The final confrontation. Before a decision could be made, the chronoloch shattered. A colossal rift tore open above Antarctica. From it emerged the full presence of a Veiled One. Not a fragment, but a being of incomprehensible scale, its form stretching across the sky like a living eclipse. The world went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Kalian stepped forward, his body glowing brighter than ever before. Through the harmonic grid, he channeled every remaining fragment of Laminii power still embedded in the earth. A brilliant column of light erupted from Antarctica, colliding with the descending darkness. For a moment, light and void were perfectly balanced. Then Kalian spoke, not to humans, but to the Veiled One itself. "You were not defeated. You were contained. And now, you stand at the same crossroads we once faced." Images flooded the sky. visions of creation, destruction, harmony, and chaos. The Veiled One hesitated. In that moment, humanity made its choice. Across the world, governments, scientists, and spiritual leaders, despite their differences, activated a global resonance network built in desperation from Lamini blueprints. Massive arrays of energy, satellites, and planetary sensors synchronized with the harmonic grid. Instead of weapons, they sent a signal of unity, a frequency of balance, a declaration that humanity would not seek domination, only coexistence with the laws of the universe. The effect was immediate. The rift stabilized. The Veiled One did not attack. Instead, it gazed upon Earth and upon humanity with an awareness older than stars. Slowly, it withdrew, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. The rift sealed itself. The chronolock repaired, stronger than before, now reinforced not just by Lamini's sacrifice, but by human will. The Veiled Ones retreated beyond time once more. Not as prisoners, but as watchers. The legacy lives on. In the aftermath, Earth was changed forever. Humans did not forget. The Antarctic chamber became a sacred and scientific site, guarded by all nations. Kalian remained, not as a ruler, but as a guide, teaching humanity the principles of balance the Lamini once lived by. The buried remnants of Etherian were gradually studied, not exploited. Seraphine's sacrifice became legend once more, this time remembered not as myth, but as history. Humanity rebuilt. Cleaner energy systems replaced destructive ones. Warfare declined. Cooperation grew. Not because humans were perfect, but because they had seen what lay beyond reality and understood how fragile existence truly was. Deep beneath the ice, fragments of the celestial nexus still glowed faintly, a memorial to a lost civilization. And far beyond time, the Veiled Ones remained. Waiting, watching, testing, not for weakness, but for wisdom. Final closing lines. Etherian fell so that the world might live. The Lamini vanished so that humanity might rise. And the Veiled Ones withdrew, not in defeat, but in eternal balance. For in the vast tapestry of existence, light and darkness are not enemies. They're Miro. The world did not return to normal. It returned to something wiser. In the years following the breach, humanity rebuilt not only its cities, but its understanding of reality. The encounter with the Veiled Ones, and with Elder Kalian, reshaped science, philosophy, and spirituality in ways no war or discovery ever had. Antarctica was no longer just ice. It became the axis of memory, a place where the past, present, and future seemed to converge. The Lamini chamber where Kalian awakened was sealed beneath a vast, multinational sanctuary, the Concord of Earth, jointly governed by every nation. No weapons were allowed there. No resource extraction. No exploitation. Only study, remembrance, and protection. Inside the ancient crystal halls, holograms of Etherian replayed endlessly. The radiant towers, the floating orbs, the celestial nexus, and Seraphine's final sacrifice. Students from across the world came to learn, not how to dominate nature, but how to live within it. Kalian remained. He did not rule. He did not preach. He guided. He taught humanity what the Lamini had once known, that technology without wisdom leads to extinction, and power without balance leads to ruin. The hidden awakening. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, far below even Kalian's chamber, something else stirred. A fragment of the celestial nexus had survived. Not as a machine, not as a structure, but as a sentient shard of light, imbued with Seraphine's consciousness at the moment of her sacrifice. For tens of thousands of years, it had drifted in a state between life and memory, embedded within the planet's core energy grid. Now, strengthened by humanity's activation of the harmonic grid, it began to resonate. In a vast underground crystalline cavern, buried beyond any human reach, the shard pulsed, brighter, stronger, more aware. And for the first time since Etherian's fall, Seraphine remembered, not as a person, but as an echo of cosmic intelligence, awakening through the living heartbeat of Earth itself. Through this shard, she perceived the world as it had become. Cities of glass and light instead of crystal. Satellites instead of solar arcs. Artificial intelligence instead of living energy constructs. Humanity flawed, fragile, yet astonishingly resilient. A faint presence rippled through the harmonic grid, unnoticed by most, but felt by a few. Certain individuals across the world suddenly began having vivid dreams. They saw a city of light beneath ice. They heard a voice whispering through auroras. They felt a deep, ancient love for Earth that was not their own. These people became known as the Rememberers, not chosen by gods, but awakened by the planet itself. They did not worship Seraphine. They carried her legacy. Beyond time, the Veiled Ones watch. Far beyond the chronoloch, in the dimension outside time, the Veiled Ones had changed. They were no longer solely beings of destruction. Their encounter with humanity, small, fragile, but united, had altered their perception. They did not fear humans. They observed them. Within their timeless prison, they reconstructed events across countless realities, timelines where the Luminii never fell. Humanity destroyed itself. The Veiled Ones broke free and consumed Earth, or where balance was achieved much earlier. But in this reality, something unprecedented had occurred. A species had chosen restraint over domination. That intrigued them. One of the Veiled Ones projected a subtle signal through the chronoloch. Not an attack, but a question. Not in words. In patterns of cosmic probability. The message translated, in human understanding, would have meant, are you ready to be guardians, or will you become tyrants like those before you? Humanity did not hear this consciously. But the planet did. The harmonic grid shifted slightly, adapting, evolving, learning. The return of the last Luminii. Years after the breach, a second discovery shocked the world. In a deep Arctic cavern, far from Antarctica, explorers uncovered another Luminii stasis vault. Inside were 12 Luminii elders, perfectly preserved in radiant chambers. Among them was Lasara, the ancient council member who had once wept before the activation of the chronoloch. When awakened, they did not react with anger or superiority. They wept, not for themselves, for Etherian, for Seraphine, for a civilization that had vanished so completely that even its ruins were nearly forgotten. But instead of reclaiming Earth, they chose to walk among humans, disguised, learning, observing. Some became scientists. Some became environmental protectors. Some became philosophers. Some lived quietly in remote regions, guarding ancient sites. They did not seek to rebuild Etherian. They sought to ensure humanity did not repeat it. The new nexus. Deep beneath Antarctica, guided by Kalian and the awakened Rememberers, humanity constructed something unprecedented. Not a weapon. Not a prison, but a new nexus, a planetary consciousness bridge. It was built not from crystal alone, but from a fusion of Luminii energy principles, human quantum computing, global environmental networks, and the planet's own magnetic field. This new nexus did not control Earth. It listened to it. It sensed suffering ecosystems, unstable climates, and imbalances in natural cycles, gently guiding corrective measures without domination. For the first time in history, technology served balance rather than exploitation. And somewhere deep within its structure, the fragment of Seraphine's consciousness resonated, subtly shaping its evolution. Etherian's final secret. Kalian eventually revealed a truth humanity had not yet learned. Etherian had not been destroyed solely by the Veiled Ones. It had fallen because the Luminii grew too certain of their own perfection. They believed harmony was permanent. They believed they were beyond failure. They believed the universe owed them stability. That arrogance, more than the Veiled Ones, had been their true downfall. Humanity, he warned, stood at the same crossroads. Not in power, but in belief. If they ever convinced themselves they were beyond consequences, beyond nature, beyond balance, then their fate would mirror Etherian's. The quiet return of light. Centuries later, far in humanity's future, something extraordinary happened. During a rare planetary alignment, the skies above Antarctica glowed brighter than ever before. Not in chaos, not in destruction, but in serenity. Beneath the ice, the shard of the celestial nexus
awakened fully. For a fleeting moment, a figure of pure radiant light rose from the depths, visible only to those who had learned to see beyond ordinary reality. Seraphine returned, not as a ruler, not as a god, but as a guardian memory.
She did not speak.
She simply placed her luminous hand upon the planet's energy grid, strengthening it, harmonizing it, weaving ancient Luminii wisdom into humanity's new nexus. Then she faded, not gone, but present in every heartbeat of Earth, in every aurora, in every star reflected on ice. The final revelation. In the deepest reaches beyond time, the Veiled Ones felt this shift. For the first time, they did not perceive Earth as prey. They perceived it as a student of existence, a planet learning balance, a species learning humility, a legacy of light surviving beyond extinction. One of the Veiled Ones finally spoke, not to humanity, but to the cosmos itself. We are not the end. They are not the beginning. Together, they may become the balance. And with that, the Veiled Ones retreated deeper into their timeless realm, not as enemies, but as eternal observers. Closing lines of Part 6. Aetherion was not reborn. It did not need to be. The Laminii did not return to rule. They chose to guide. Humanity did not conquer the darkness. They learned to coexist with it. And in the silence beneath the ice, the memory of a lost city of light became something greater than history. It became the future.